Hi, I'm Katrina in Heuvel. There really isn't any other word. Congressional Republicans are simply appalling. They have absolute control of the House, they set the agenda, they decide what comes to the floor, they decide what passes on to the Senate. They know that extremist legislation isn't going to be enacted into law. The Democratic majority in the Senate and the Democratic president stand in the way. So the legislation the GOP chooses to pass is a statement of its own values, of its identity. And for the vast majority of Americans, what they proudly proclaim is simply beyond the pale. Republicans just passed a farm bill. It lords out $195 billion in subsidies for agribusiness, but at the same time drops food stamps from the bill for the first time in 40 years. In this time of mass unemployment, 47 million Americans rely on food stamps. Nearly one-half are children under 18. The recipients are largely white, female, and young. The Republican caucus has decided to drop them from the bill as, quote, extraneous, without having separate legislation to sustain them. Republicans in the House passed a 2014 budget guideline, knowing the Senate won't accept it. They refuse even to enter into negotiations with the Senate to find a compromise. What does their bill do? It would deprive millions of health care with deep cuts in Medicaid, and of course, repeal Obamacare. It not only continues the mindless and damaging sequester cuts, but it exacts them all from domestic services, education, environmental protection, food aid, drug testing, Head Start, while exempting the Pentagon. It gets worse. The Senate passed comprehensive immigration reform. The compromise bill earned rare bipartisan support. Its provisions made much harsher to meet conservative objections. There's likely a majority that would vote to pass that reform in the House, but the Republican caucus demands that no legislation reach the floor without the support of a majority of the Republican caucus. And at this point, a majority of House Republicans rail against the reform. They're considering pass-meal laws to arm the border, spend billions on more walls, provide for more guest workers for agribusiness to exploit, while simply ignoring the 11 million people living in the shadows. Why are Republicans so appalling? Even Tea Party members want banks to be policed. Few conservative voters would defend exempting the Pentagon, the rich, and corporations from contributing anything to getting our books in order. Republican obstruction and outrages have left Congress with record low approval levels. There's much talk in Republican circles about how to, quote, relaunch the brand. But packaging won't replace leadership. Meanwhile, our nation suffers as a result, and Republicans are likely to pay the price for that.